Morning, everyone. Good to have everyone online here today. Thank you very much. I see a message from Andre. So, Anton, you're going to be on the big screen today in the blue sky meeting room. So that's a movie star. So, yeah, thank you. My name's Jonathan Crisp. I'm one of the directors of BarnOwl. And every couple of months, we hold one of these info sharing sessions. And today we're very honored and very happy to have Anton Bouwer with us, who's one of the directors of Beta Software, which is in a partnership with RSMSA, audit, risk and advisory firm. Anton's had many years of experience in data analytics, started out articling at Deloitte, worked for PwC, has worked overseas for many, many years in data analytics, leading a professional services team, worked with ACL, and now Beta Software, his company, and is the sole distributor of Arbutus, which is fantastic data analytics software, which Anton's going to show to us today. BarnOwl, we've been working very closely with Anton for many years. BarnOwl and Arbutus through Beta Software are totally, seamlessly integrated, and we've got continuous risk monitoring solution using Arbutus, where it analyzes millions of transactions and then feeds the end results of those transactions or triggers key risk indicators in BarnOwl to bring risk management to life. So I think Anton's going to show us today how easy it is to use Arbutus Analytics, their latest version. And as I say, thank you very much, Anton. Welcome today. I think you're going to share your presentation with us and carry on. And as we go, if you've got questions, just pop them in the chat room. I mean, we'll come back to questions at the end. There will be a questions and answer section. But in the meantime, you can ask questions along in the chat room, and I'll interrupt Anton if there's a pertinent question at that time. But thank you very much, Anton. We look forward to hearing your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm just going to share the screen, if you don't mind, and then you can let me know if, please, if you can see the presentation.
We can see it, Anton.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay, so let's get going without further ado. Okay, guys, I'm going to just get my presentation ready. And Jonathan, I'm getting it to a point that I'm hopefully can get it in the presentation mode. That should work. There we go. Okay, guys, again, Jonathan, thank you very much for the introduction. Much appreciated. We're going to use this morning, as it says, it's an info sharing opportunity. And what I'm hoping to do is share with you some information on something called low code, no code, and the acronym LCNC. If you hear this in future, you can talk and use the buzzword as well, because it's something not really new, but it's a new acronym. Like we all know that in IT space, new acronyms is what they thrive on. And we're going to speak about low code, no code, and specifically how it applies to what we've been doing in the risk monitoring, continuous auditing space using the software. And so what you'll see today is we'll have a quick chat about the topic itself, and then let's just dive straight into the topic itself in practice and with a practical example. So we're going to go ahead and have a quick discussion about what is low code, no code. And what you see on our the first slide here is, I think, one of the best articles that I've read about low-code, no-code movement. It's written by a non-IT person. And in this particular case, this Jason Bloomberg from Forbes magazine wrote this article, and you can, it's worthwhile go and read it. But he's really saying that it's more disruptive than you realize. I still have to come to a conclusion whether I agree with him on it, and I'll tell you later on why it's still up for grabs whether this low-code, no-code movement is going to be the magic bullet that everybody has been looking for many years in order to to achieve certain objectives. So let's move on and ask the question: what does low-code, no-code movement represent, and what it's all about? What does it mean? So from here on, I'm going to refer to LCNC, and we all now know it's low-code and no-code. So low-code, no-code development refers to an environment where visual drag-and-drop applications or similar tools allow individuals and teams to program applications without a lot of linear coding. We're going to speak about what this means in a second. But here's an example. So you want to create a smartphone application. You want to create something that everybody can use, and you can share it with all smartphone users. They can install it and do something with it. Either buy something from your website, or it might be as simple as checking the star links that come across your skies at night and see when and where they are. It's all of those beautiful thoughts come to mind that you want to develop a new application. But you're going to now need that professional engineer to write the code for you. And what this is saying is, with low-code, no-code environments, this virtual studios make it easier for less skilled programmers to simply choose visual icons. Remember those, the words visual icons, and the components of the application, and drop them into a model. And that's really what it means in a technical term. You'll see this is Technopedia that describes it in this way. And although certain words here sounds technical, what I want to leave with you is the fact that previously there was a skilled professional engineer necessary to write code. With low-code, no-code, the hope is that you're going to be able, a less skilled programmer. Now that word is also very interesting. Do you still need to be a programmer, but only less skilled? And how do you measure that? But what really is important here is that you need to simply choose visual icons. So it's getting back to the click and drag type of solution that we're looking at. Okay, so if that's the case, let's look at the benefits of LCNC. Users use a user-friendly graphical user interface. All of us are aware of what GUI stands for these days. It means that, I remember a joke that I heard many years ago when there was a little boy that asked his dad if we can go to the dark place. And his dad was quite shocked and said, "But where's the dark place?" And he was talking about the old DOS, or disk operating system environment, where application programs used to program in. It was a black screen, and there's no graphical user interface. And then with the advent of Windows and these type of software, everyone now can see what they do. It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's a graphical user interface. So now LCNC is a graphical user interface that makes it possible, or not necessary, for us to go to the dark place. The dark place being the place where you write programs, the coding that takes place. And it says through you marry the components of application program interfaces, where you program, and a GUI. And I hope this is starting to make sense to you, what LCNC is really trying to achieve. It is taking the programming to a GUI interface. this last sentence of the first paragraph is especially important to understand the benefits of LC&C. Application builders can now rearrange and repeatedly test their modules until the application works as expected. Why is that so important? Because keep in mind that if, and many of you might have been involved in testing new applications, new systems that's being installed in your environment. You typically have users that test the system and then they find areas that doesn't work. That's a concern. Those issues are then being reported to the developers and the whole cycle starts again. Nobody knows what the developers do to correct the errors or the issues picked up by the user test team. And then they put it back into testing and the users test again. And now there's a waiting period while testing takes place. And then any issues gets fed back to the developers. And this vicious circle keeps on happening until eventually you get to a point that this system is finally accepted by everybody. And the moment that happens, we're now in a position that we can say, let's continue with the implementation of the system. Now, what we're saying with LC&C is that since the user could be the developer, this whole process is instantaneously. If something is wrong, the user immediately changes the module and test it again and test it again. So I hope you can start seeing that if this is real, we can start seeing the benefit of LC&C, not so much in the fact that you don't need to know so much about programming, but the speed at which applications can be developed, because this separation between the developer and the user of the application is being addressed in this process. Okay. Now, it's just the growth of low-code has been proliferated due to a lack of skilled software developers and a need to improve the turnaround time for development. That's exactly what I've been saying. But this lack of skilled software developers is a real thing. Not so much because they're not there, they are there. But so many people require them to develop software. And that's where the issue comes in. It's not because we don't have skilled software developers, but it's because we are asking so much of them. And therefore, what we're saying is that LC&C can benefit us in taking some of the pressure away from software developers and make the turnaround time for many of these things much, much faster. Okay, now let's move on to something more specific. Guys, if you give me a second, I'm just going to do something here and close some of my stuff that we don't start getting notifications on the screen. Okay, let's move on to the next slide that says, what does this mean? So let's talk English and let's talk business applications instead of technical words and use them. But the first thing that we see there is that we've said the developers are scarce. It takes very long to develop a new application. Now, the developer is needed because he can code. Now, most of us, if not all of us, have heard the words, oh no, she's a coder or he's a coder, or they write computer programs. And it's almost said with some reverence in the sense that, oh, you know, that guy, he's married to a computer programmer. You know, that mystical thing about computer programmers and how they do almost like magic. And it's to many of us, and I used to be one of them. I would like, I refer to programmers, you know, as those guys that you never get on their wrong side, because there's going to come a day where you want them to do some magic for you. So therefore, you know, be friendly to them. You don't know what they do, but you know they're doing something important. And there at the bottom, you'll see the second last paragraph. I don't know if you're the same, but I can clearly remember when I promised myself, one day I'm going to learn how to write a computer program. And but we haven't, so we're not part of that mysterious group. And therefore, we're in the position where we say LC&C is exists because of the need for developers. The turnaround times are notoriously slow because user testers cannot correct, improve applications on the fly. Therefore, this is the crux. In theory, if everyone can code or coding is not difficult, everyone can develop an application. So, is it possible to maybe take the mystery out of computer programming? Now, let me, at this point, maybe just pause for a second and tell you that there are many people that don't believe low-code, no-code is a real thing, that it's a fad, or is even resisting this. And I'm saying this purely because that's what's being reported in many articles. Typically, IT is difficult to convince that low-code, no-code is a real thing. They think it's something more software developers or vendors wants to implement. And it doesn't really work because you need a good programmer to write an application. And therefore, to many of them, it's a theory. There are some reason for why they think so. There has been, or there have been a number of previous attempts with different names, but it's the same thing, low-code, no-code. There's something called rapid application development, RAD, and a few others that came along during the years that promised to make programming much faster and much easier. However, all of those applications or software systems were aimed at existing software developers or programmers. I think the real difference between low-code, no-code and RAD, for instance, is that low-code, no-code is aiming its benefits at the non-programmer or the less experienced programmer. And that's a very important distinction that needs to be made here, because it is no longer aimed at IT. And that might be an explanation why IT is resisting it to some extent. If you were, I think to some extent, it's one can look at it like you're being a magician, and now somebody is coming along and saying, you know what, here's an application that can make you a magician as well. So I can understand that people might feel threatened about it, but I personally don't think it's at all the case. Programmers will always be needed for more complex stuff, but could it be possible that most of us get to a point that we can develop the basic application and get the turnaround time much faster? So it's a software vendor solution. That's another point to remember. Low-code, no-code is not something that came from a revolution from users or from IT themselves. IT has never done this in our organizations. Came forward and say, listen, we want you guys to code as well, and we're going to assist you in doing it. This is software vendors that is now creating solutions that enable non-coders to develop an application. So I hope you can see why this is not something that's going to come from IT. I know there's and you know, I'm not a big supporter of conspiracy theories, but all of us have heard about people saying that the petrol companies and the motor vehicle companies is resisting electrical cars because of many reasons, that it's against what they what they want to sell to people. But this case is also something one need to be aware of, the fact who is selling this to the user interface. It is the software vendors, and there's a reason for that, because they want to sell more licenses of their software. If I can give you a software that also enable you to code, I'm not going to sell it to the coders only. I'm going to sell it to a much broader user base. So let's just be realistic. Why low-code, no-code is a topic that's being discussed a lot these days. It's because software vendors want you to use their software, and specifically where the usage of the software was inhibited by the fact that people could not code. Those type of software are the type of software that will now start adding low-code, no-code to their functionality. Okay, guys, I think let's go and have a look at some of the benefits and ask the question, can low-code, no-code really turn anyone into a programmer? So I'm starting off there by saying yes, it's possible and it makes a lot of sense. A programming language is finite. It's not something that is completely impossible to capture into a box. So it's possible. If I can write a program that instead of having to code, I give you some icons, you click and drag on them, and I'm writing the code in the background because it's a language. It's like speaking French. It's French. If I'm saying yes, and I convert it, it becomes oui. Not that I can speak French, but I can say oui. But for the rest of it, if I'm saying something in English and I've got an application that converts my words into French, why can I not do it with a programming language? If I've got an icon, I know what I want to do. I can see with my eyes what I want to do. And if I click and drag certain icons around, and I understand what the program should do, why should there not be the capability to write the code in the background to achieve the visual objective that I'm putting down there? Now, it sounds like the silver bullet. However, it is still difficult for non-coders to do certain things. So you need to connect to software. So we're talking about open database connectivities, which is ODBC connections, connections to SAP, connection to SQL Server. Those are technical issues that us less capable or knowledgeable users won't know how to do. You can learn how to do it, but it's not something that the software is going to provide to you. You will still need to know what data do I need in order to achieve my objectives of my application. So I, for instance, want to see if the person who captured or approved a purchase order is also the person that approved payment to the vendor. If it's a segregation of duty issues that concerns me, it's beautiful. I know what I want to do. Somebody else might have connected me to my ERP system, but where do I get that information in order to compare the person that placed the order with the person that approved the vendor invoice payment? And you know where it is? In a number of different tables inside of your database. You don't know which tables they are. You don't even know which fields to use to compare to each other. So those type of things we don't know, and LCNC is not going to assist us in doing that. And you still need to know how to achieve the objective with the commands and functions inside of the application that you use. So there's a few things that will still be difficult, but LCNC is referring to coding, low code, no code, not to data access. So let's assume those other things are in place. And that's why I'm saying it's not a threat to IT. IT and software developers will always be there. There are technical stuff that they will have to involve us in. However, if they've given us the right data, if they've given us a platform to go and develop an app on, like a data warehouse, we'll be in a position to very quickly develop an app with a very low turnaround time, if this is true. And I believe it's definitely true. All right, so software with LCNC capabilities flourish in this environment where data is made available to users by technical specialists, non-coders, use that data to create an analytic. We're going to look at how to create a data analytical task by not coding. All right. At the bottom, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, so your perception stays in the right place. It's driven by software vendors because it sells more licenses to more users. And I've explained it again, but I'm going to mention it to you this way again. If I sell my software, and like you can see at the bottom, and Jonathan has told you, we work with something called Arbutus Data Analytics. And this software is a piece of software that connects to databases, imports data, and then analyzes this data, and then automate the process through a procedure or a program. And so I'm using it, and my colleagues are using it because we can program. We can use the software to analyze data. We can connect to databases. However, if I can get this software so that other non-technical users can go and develop applications and rerun it and schedule it to run at specific times of the day or the night, what's going to happen? I'm going to sell my software to more people because all of a sudden the usage of the software have increased dramatically. All right, so let's look at a practical example. So we're getting to, I'm looking at it, it looks like we are now into almost 20 minutes. So I just want to make sure that I don't go over my time and that we've got enough time to look at the practical example. So here we've got an example of a risk and compliance department that wants to continuously monitoring the capture of inventory movements after hours. So to understand what we are doing here, it's an environment where we say, listen, on a continuous basis, I've got certain analytics that is linked to, in this particular case, we're going to use BarnOwl GRC that we integrate with, and we will be adding new analytics to feed into BarnOwl. So out of BarnOwl, we've identified a risk that inventory movements are captured invalidly or that they are captured inaccurately. And typically what we're saying is that we're concerned about that inventory write-offs takes place. And they specifically, after investigation, we found that they are captured after hours. Typically because then there are less people noticing us capturing those inventory adjustments or inventory movements that try and hide fraudulent activity in the stores. So in order to get information continuously of the happenings of this, so we've identified this risk, and now we're saying in our data we've got information about how regularly and what the value is of these adjustments or inventory movements that's being captured after hours. And maybe on a 6 monthly basis, we extract that information and we get together and we say, you know what, the risk is either now higher or lower. And what we're saying is, why can we not use a data analytical solution that is continuously monitoring the capturing of inventory movements after hours? And that is continuously or on a monthly basis feed this information into BarnOwl, and we can visualize and see where this risk is heading towards, and maybe even see where it happens more than it happens in other areas. So it's a very valid need for an application, because we're saying here's a risk and we want to have continuous risk monitoring application that's continuously monitoring this risk and displaying it in BarnOwl for risk managers to use it in their management process. So what will happen is the data will be analyzed in Arbutus, it will be summarized, and that information will be integrated into BarnOwl on a very high level. That's what needs to happen. It is almost the business case for this application. Now, traditionally what will happen is this business case will be given to a system and a business analyst to go ahead and speak to IT, speak to the user, draw up a design for an application, and then hand it over to IT. IT will go ahead and within their busy schedule, prioritize this application. And let's be honest, 6 months down the line, we might get into testing if we're lucky. And then we're going to test it, and that cycle is going to take another 3 months. So we're close to saying that a year later, this application is going to work and it's going to work well. We then find, oh, there's a small change that we need to make, and it will go through the same change management process. And let's say it's very possible that 1.5 years later, this application will settle down and the risk and compliance department can now start using this thing on a regular basis, confidently that it's working. And it's not saying anything bad about the IT or anybody else, but it's saying something about the time it takes to implement an application. And it takes a while. So here we can clearly see that it takes a while. Now, if we can get in a situation where the data is the required information, the data is obtained, extracted from the ERP and made available to all of the other users, the risk and compliance department actually. And we say, okay, there's your data. Do with it what you want. And we can then say, instead of traditionally coding it in what we call the SQL or any other language that sounds so beautiful. I mean, you have to compliment IT in the way that the words that they created. It's all part of that mysteriousness of IT. Look at structured query language, SQL, beautiful words. Basically, it's a program. It's English to French. Instead of calling it French, you just make it a long word with an acronym behind it. It is saying from English what you wanted the computer to do. So we need SQL language programming code to do this. We're going to use Arbutus version 7. It's now possible to achieve the same objective with a software's workflow functionality. And let's see how that happens. So this is what you see there, the traditional code to achieve what we described earlier. And I'm putting this on the screen again because because I wrote this code, and I want you to be very, very impressed, please. Yes, I wrote it on my own, and I didn't refer to a manual at all. I remembered every word out of my head, and yes, I'm that good. So I'm joking. Hopefully you'll see realize that I am a programmer, and therefore I'm joking with myself. But this is traditional code, and it does look complex. Let's all be honest about this. The first feeling you get that given enough time, if I weren't this busy, I would be able to do this myself. And yes, you're right, but you won't be doing it very well. To be honest with you, I spent many years, and I still go to the help file quite often in order to just write a simple piece of code. It is what we do, and you do what you do. So I cannot do what you do. There's no doubt about it. However, low-code, no-code might now make it possible for you to do what I've done there very quickly and without a lot of knowledge that you need to obtain. And yes, I do feel slightly concerned that people will realize that what I've done here is not as clever as I want people to think. And yes, I can understand to some extent why IT would be less inclined to support low-code, no-code for many reasons. A person like me would tell you that, yes, you can probably do this, but, and there's many reasons why you won't do it as quickly as I can do it. And that's not really true. Because remember the slide where I told you, low-code, no-code has got low and no is important. The code is the important thing. I know you cannot access the data required for this. There you see a table called inf movements. And inf movements is a table that comes from a system called Syspro. And you won't know that, but I can make that available to you. So therefore, I've still got a reason to be there, to give you all of this information. But you can do these things through something called a low-code, no-code graphical user interface. And what you see on the screen here is Arbutus version 7's workflow functionality, where I have exactly what we saw in the traditional code, repeated, but on a graphical user interface. And I've made it look nice here, by adding a bunch of these comments, etc. But in essence, remember what I said about the icons. Each one of these icons, I can click and drag and place on the workflow grid. And when I do that, I can tell it what to do when this portion of the application runs. I then went ahead and can you see that is a data extract. So I extracted from this table inf movements. Step 1, records that match transaction time and it's bigger than 7 o'clock in the evening or earlier than 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm just going to go back to my traditional code. And can you see that this code is now less intimidating? Step 1. open inf movements, set the filter transaction time after 7 o'clock or before 6 o'clock, and extract it to inventory movement after hours. So have a look at that. There's step one. Isn't this beautiful to see the program instead of reading the program? It makes so much more sense. And this is what a user will do versus what a software developer would do. You would put the icon in place. I can clearly see. Can you see the arrow? It makes sense, man. I'm taking something from inf movement. I'm extracting it based upon a filter. Only those records. Look at that. 28,000 records. 518 met or matched the filter. And then I went to step 2. Detailed exceptions are exported to Excel for BarnOwl consumption. There's an export. It goes outside of Arbutus to Excel. BarnOwl will pick this up and visualize it. Step number 3. I create a matrix or a pivot of after-hour movements per warehouse per month. And this I export to a spreadsheet for BarnOwl consumption. Very quickly, anybody, any one of you can see what the program is going to do. Going back to my traditional things, there's step 2, step 3, step 4, export a matrix for BarnOwl consumption. There's the code behind it. So if I go back and see what this does, I immediately start seeing that it's visually so much easier to look at. It is visually possible for another person to understand the program without reading the code. And I'm mentioning this to you, and I'm standing still for a second, because I think it's extremely important for you to realize that one of the biggest objects, or one of the reasons why it was so difficult for non-coders to understand coding, is because of the visual way that a computer program was interpreted versus a GUI or graphical user interface that makes it possible for all of us to understand. And I think it is high time that we understand, or that non-programmers at least has got the capability of reading the stuff and saying, you know what, this makes sense. And I've come across situations where an absolute non-programmer would question my program for the first time ever. They would say, well, why do you do that? Why don't you maybe, instead of step 4 coming from step 3, why could we not have at the same time an extraction straight into a step 4 and miss step 3? As an example. They haven't said that to me in this particular case, but what I'm saying is, just by reading or viewing this, the process makes sense. Now, there's a big difference. Keep in mind, a lot of you might have seen Visio. It's a program, a Microsoft program, where you can draw these type of pictures and send it to people and say, this is what happens. Is that what happens in real life? Nobody knows. Because somebody have drawn a picture and given it to you, you can look at it and say, yeah, it makes sense. But you don't know if the program follows these steps. And I want to really ask you to concentrate here. This is the difference between traditional development versus low code, no code. Nothing here, every green tick that you see there, and I'm introducing the log at the bottom, can only be ticked green if the code behind it ran successfully. And in this case, it ran right to step 4 successfully with 4 green ticks, 5 actually. So the difference is, it's not a picture that I'm showing you. I'm showing you an actual program that ran successfully. So when you look at what happened here, there could be no inaccuracy or incompleteness involved. This is what happens. You open a table. You extract some data, you export to a spreadsheet, you create a pivot or a matrix, and you export it to a spreadsheet. It worked. Now I want you to look at the current log at the bottom. Can you see that the commands that's being captured in the log looks very similar to the traditional program that I showed you before? Have a look at that summarize, and I'm going to go back again. can you see there summarize on warehouse transaction month fields, etc. So the code that was a few moments ago almost impossible for most of us to read, now all of a sudden exists, but it looks like that. So this is where we're creating the matrix per warehouse, per month, value, and we also counted to see how many records are in there. So the code in the background, this is really what it's all about. By clicking and dragging onto a visual graphical user interface, the code behind it, remember I said the code is finite? It knows you want to summarize. Yeah, because you selected summary from the groupings. It knows you're going to summarize. It will ask you on which fields. It will ask you, which value do you want to sum. You will tell it through your keyboard what to do. The moment you saves this, it will always remember that this is the code that it must run when you click on run. So I'm going to stop now by talking too much about the graphical user interface, but I hope you can see why I'm excited about low code, no code, even as, and I don't hesitate to call myself an advanced programmer, because I love writing very detailed programs, and I've taught myself this over 20, 25 years. However, I'm seeing this as low code, no code, as getting users involved in data analytics that previously would have nothing to do with it because of the magic behind it. I'm just not, that's not my line. I've never been good with this. You need to be good with mathematicals, or you need to be good with something else that I'm just not. So I'm going to tell you it's not necessary. I'm seeing a lot of the burden taken away from me to spend my time on highly complex analytics. But I'm also seeing a bunch of people getting into my environment and supporting data analytics, because now it makes it possible for absolutely non-coders to develop something like this and create an application by themselves, very little assistance from me, and test it and on the fly improve it until they're happy with it and it runs on a continuous basis. I'm going to make the tables available to them. I'm going to develop those very highly complex applications that really interest me. But now I've got a much larger audience that supports me in getting the software and using the software continuously. Okay, let's go and have a look at some of the, and this is purely for interest. Look at this beautiful stuff that came out of the analytic that I developed through a graphical user interface that is now being displayed in BarnOwl. So look at the warehouse. So look at warehouse C4. That's a big concern. The number of times that this happens, that they capture after hours. Can you start seeing the benefit of displaying this versus just having a spreadsheet with an exception ran every now and then, and somebody goes and follow it up? I've got a problem with C4 and C7. What is happening there? Why do they capture inventory after hours so often compared to the rest? This is where exceptions start to jump up if you compare warehouses to each other. If we start looking at the value, oh yes, C4, C7 was an issue, but really there we've got a different issue if we start looking at G1. Now we're talking value. After hours, these guys are capturing very high value, well in advance, on an average over 100,000 that I need to investigate. So I hope you can see the benefits of creating an app quickly, with a very short turnaround, and then visualizing it in a BarnOwl, a GRC, on a continuous basis. Now imagine if this happens every month, and we start seeing the different warehouses. And yes, we can investigate G1 and understand why. And G1 might even go lower, or we will understand why they are this high. But all of a sudden in future, C22 that is starting to show its head just above the radar. I'm watching this as a risk manager. C4 has always been an issue, both on count as well as on value. And I'm watching them, and you know what? Our next audit will be directed at C4 and G1. And over time, this radar screen is telling me where to spend my efforts in managing risks. Okay, guys. So with some time available, the question is it really that easy? I mean, I've shown you a few slides. So what I'm going to do here is, so I think we've got, Cheryl, can you confirm that we've spent 17, almost 18 minutes? Oh, what's the time now? I cannot see the time, unfortunately.
Well, we've got 15 minutes left, and when you're ready, you can let me know and I can open the functionality that people can unmute themselves.
Okay, let's go and do it live, and then afterwards we will open the floor for questions. So what I'm going to do here is quickly go back here, and I'm going to open Arbutus Analyzer. So what you see here with Arbutus Analyzer is it's a live database. I can show you that my different warehouses look something like this. There I've got a listing of warehouses. I can drill down into a warehouse very easily. So I'm using the software to analyze data. However, I want to develop an application. And the question was, and you will see that I have under my procedures, I have the, I'm just going to go and find it quickly, the inventory movements. This is my workflow. And I'll show you what you've just seen on the screen. So I'm opening the workflow, and you will see that this workflow now contains no log. It looks exactly like you saw on the screen. If I double click on it, you can see I can select another table if I wanted, any table available to me. I can go and you will see that this is an extract the fields to a specific table if it's after 7 o'clock or before 6 o'clock. And if I double click on it, I can go through a graphical interface and select everything, add it here, and click OK if I'm happy. So what you see here is I don't write any code at all. So just to quickly show you what the code in the background looks like, it looks something like this. This is the stuff that I'm proud of because I wrote it. In order to run it, I will go right click and say save and run. When I click on save and run, look closely, it happens quickly. The program runs. And boom, there's my end result. You will see in my log, it did everything. It tells you when it did it, what's the records produced. Now, so clearly, program ran, and you can see what it looks like. However, if I were to go back into my workflow, and you can see there's the same extract, there's an export. So I have to run it before I can actually do something here. There's the export, there's another extract, and there is a step fast export that takes place in step 4. Let's see if we can run this. It goes, and can you see the green ticks happening? This happened live. There's my current log. The export took place. It was successful. Step 3, everything now that you saw on the slides happened in practice. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you, let's assume that we wanted to go and do additional tests. Let's just say that we wanted to total something. The value of the records that match the transaction time after hours. You click, drag, and bring it onto the environment. And I can now link something to it. And I can tell it to go and total the cost value. And it has been added there. Can you guys see the benefit versus coding? I've just used the total value and totally I can place it anywhere that I want. Can you see that you don't need that technical knowledge in order to create this application? This is a full application. Now, I get the results. I get the output into spreadsheet. There's something wrong. I needed another column. I needed another value in there. Anything else that I might need in the spreadsheet. before BarnOwl can really consume it. I can come back, not tomorrow, not in another 3 months, and send it back to the software developer. I can go straight and say, Lord, want the code change? Yeah. But I include in my matrix and extract it on the fly. Can you imagine that by this afternoon, this application is working because it's in my domain? I've always been very passionate about stuff being in my domain. The moment it's in my domain, I can only hold myself accountable for making it happen. Until that time, I'm dependent on other departments, people, resources, and software. So now I'm saying to you that it's now in your domain. If you've got access to data, it's in your domain to make the application happen as fast as you and your team can make it happen. Okay, guys, I'm going to end off by going back to my slides and summarize it by saying, or concluding to say that low code, no code is real. Zero knowledge of coding language is required. And I'm saying zero because I mean zero. Low code, no code will not be used by those experienced programmers. I don't use it, to be honest with you. I might in future, but I haven't yet. It's still required. A bunch of stuff is required for advanced coding. Software developers, don't be concerned. Support this movement, because you're going to get a bunch of supporters that you didn't have before. And if you adopt it correctly and with a positive attitude, LCNC technology can have a significant impact on the application development lifecycle. A lot of those apps is going to happen quickly, fast, and usable for the user. Low code, no code is fun. I hope you guys saw it now when I started working in Arbutus. It is fun. It's a blank space where you can click and drag and build something that didn't exist before. For those creative people, this is something you're going to love. You're going to see this beautiful graphical user interface, put this stuff together. And I know of a colleague of mine whose name I won't mention, but because he's on the group here, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about, that if he looks at my workflow, you'll cringe, because he's just much more colorful and he spends a lot of time getting his workflow looking beautiful. The fact is, it is fun. It's like getting that key to a room that you couldn't enter before. You can program. It's the future of app development. I firmly believe this. More people should get involved in app development, because we all know there are too few apps out there to meet our needs. Finally, all major software developers are investing in LCNC. That tells you something. It's going to be part of your software very soon, whether you want that or not. Because remember, they want to sell more licenses. So be aware of it, but also be aware of the fact that it's fun and it can assist you in achieving objectives that you might not have been able to achieve before. Okay, Cheryl, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for spending some time listening to me. It's been great fun for myself as well. And I'm going to leave the presentation on for now. And just hand it back to you, Cheryl, Jonathan, and open it up for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Anton. That was great. I spent most of my life, or half my life, coding, so you've just taken away my job. But no, that's, no, as you say, it's a brilliant at getting value or adding value and getting more people involved with getting value out of systems. And the whole idea of having systems is for them to embed themselves in an organization, and for the organizations to get value. So this no code, low code helps greatly in that. So it's brilliant. So there's not much time left. Let's open the floor. Any questions from anyone? Go for it. There's a question, Cheryl. Sorry, I can't see. I just want to see.
Cuban.
Oh, Cuban, go for it. Hi, Cuban. Are you on mute? Or everyone's on mute, Cheryl? Have you unmuted?
You can unmute.
Yeah. Hi, Jonathan. Oh, well, thanks. Hi, Anton. Great presentation. I think it's more a statement than a question. But in the emerging technology asset management space, which is still not really well defined as such in the market, in my view, and that's where I work. And I think this actually will add great value, especially if you want to have a combined hardware, software, and any kind of combined asset view or a single dashboard. This is where it comes in very, very well. So I think it's going to work. Don't know what the rest of the audience feels, but I think it's definitely the right way to go. And with the turnaround time, that's actually the main selling point here and how quickly we can actually go live.
Fully agree with you, Cuban. I think it's a great comment. I'm actually much more supportive of this because of that turnaround time. I've really been involved in so many cases where we got a program coming back to us. We spend a lot of time on it, and then it goes back to the client. And whatever you do, you very seldom get a satisfied client because of the turnaround time. The client is, whatever you do is important to that client. However, you have 20 or 30 clients to satisfy. There is only so much that you can typically do. And what I'm hoping for is that as low-code, no-code develops and becomes more available to people, that turnaround time is going to make people's experience of applications and application development process a more positive one.
Anton, Andre's got a question for you.
Hi, Anton. You're actually speaking to Alistair. I'm part of the Cash Build internal auditing team.
Anton, Alistair is the new chap that's going to take us to the future here.
Wonderful. Welcome, Alistair. Good to meet you.
Thank you so much. Yes, my question is on the flexibility of that first rule. So just to use your example that you used there, what if I'm in a retail space and I'm looking for the same information, but however, for stores, and my stores open and close at different times, and also on weekends, the times differ. So do I have to do the same rule for different stores, or do I have to create exceptions? Because I know a programmer can create exceptions to that rule and make it more flexible. But would that would low code, no code be that flexible?
Yeah, Alistair, you're touching on an important point. I think on one of my slides I mentioned that you will still need to know how to use this data analytical software, not to code, but how to develop a filter or a query. And although it's very user interface driven, you will need to, in your example, develop something that is called a conditional computed field that says, let's say, for instance, in this country or in this store, don't apply 7 o'clock, the 7 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning rule, but rather apply it differently, at different time, because of time zones, whatever the case might be. And there might be various conditions that applies to individual stores. And for the rest of them, there's a general condition. So yes, I think the answer to your question is that you might have to implement it. It is still possible with low code, no code, but what it addresses is that it is still necessary for you to do proper Arbutus analyzer training to know how to develop the filter. Not how to code it, but how to develop it with the application. And once you know how to do this, like I showed you on the graphical user interface, you'll get the opportunity to put your filter in there through the graphical user interface and save it. But yeah, there's various levels of complexity that you can go down to with low code, no code. But there are areas that this LCNC you won't be able to do without additional coding. And that's why I said, typically getting the data, normalizing the data, etc. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anton, I think we're still going to have many chats with BarnOwl and yourself from Arbutus perspective to optimize this.
Excellent. Thanks, Andre. Looking forward to that.
Question from Neil.
Good morning, Anton. From my side, I'm from Bouwer College, and I would like to compliment you. Being a user of systems throughout all the years and working with programmers, you have spoken to my heart. And this is the first presentation that I've attended from BarnOwl, and thank you so much for inviting me. You are an excellent teacher. Coming from a teaching environment, you have made it plain, simple, and easy to understand. And what we always want is ease of use, and you've done ease of use for me today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Christine, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments. And I think, interestingly, what you've just mentioned has been a passion of mine, is to really make it simple. I'm coming from an old school environment where, as an auditor, where I still used to see in real life those massive general ledger books that people used. And I remember as an audit article clerk, I used to have a green pen, a black pen, and a red pen in my pocket. And yes, they did leak at some point, each one of them. But the fact is, when I start speaking to people about SAP, massive system, I think back about those days, and SAP is nothing different. There is that book that you basically go and now analyze through data. And thank you very much, Christine, for the comment. I think low code, no code speaks to me in such a way because of that. Let's make it simple and let's just create these barriers or take away the barriers that exist from normal, hardworking users to use software to a more advanced level. Thanks for that comment. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? I see our time's up, but you're welcome to stay online, and we'll stay on for quite some time. But are there any other questions? I don't see any popping up. I had one quick one, Anton. That getting back to Alistair's question. So if you can get the basics with the GUI interface, where it creates the code, can you then, if you now need to make it more specific or add all these additional rules or complexity, can you then edit the code?
Yeah.
So can you work in both environments?
Also excellent question, Jonathan. It's absolutely possible. So you saw my traditional code, and at any point I can say do the workflow's name, and the workflow can happen, and then the workflow can give command back to my traditional code, and vice versa. So 100% correct. So we can have all of the import, all of the, let's call it the data massaging taking place, making it ready for the workflow to take over. So the user on their side say, well, okay, I've got data. I don't know how it got here. Some technical guy stole with magic, produced a data table, and now I'm developing an app on it or many apps from that data. And when I'm finished, I hand it back to the traditional code to fit into. You're 100% right. The two can work together in saying, listen, this is your task. And it really becomes a team effort. So let's say I've got a team of 5 users, each one of them developing an app through the graphical user interface. But then I've got a data analyst that does the pre and the post work to develop a large organizational set of applications. And that's what the real stuff is that I'm dreaming about, that this is where we're going, working hand in hand, making the turnaround time at least not more than 1% of what it is currently.
Yeah, thanks, Anton. Yeah, I think the other nice thing with what I've seen with our boots is just the amount of visualizations you can do with data, with vast sums of data, and how quick it is, how fast, with millions of records. I mean, when I do the write-up on this, I'll put a link in the write-up to, there's quite a nice demo on the Arbutus or on the Beta Software site, but it is very impressive. And then with the linkage, into BarnOwl, the idea there is that BarnOwl is more a management tool from a top-down approach, because I think that's what we'd spoken about, is it's very difficult to try and work out what analytics tests do you need to perform. So with a top-down approach from your risk side, risks and controls, you can actually work out where you should be focused. And then basically the idea with BarnOwl is to have a living key risk indicator, key control indicator dashboard that's reality and linked to your data, as opposed to, as I say, risk management is part science, part art. So it's part human judgment, but the analytics brings the reality to risk management. And I think that's where we've seen a very valuable link, and we're going to work much more closely with Andre, as he says, from Cashbuild, and in trying to really get the best value out of this integration.
Jonathan, yes, I was about to also mention Andre is by far the most experienced on using the integration between Arbutus and BarnOwl GRC. So I think, and Andre would probably confirm this, is that one of the big questions that came up all along during this the project with Arbutus, BarnOwl, and Cashbuild, that has been coming along about 2 years now, or is moving towards that, is the fact that how do we add new analytics? We identify in BarnOwl there's a need for a new analytic. How do we get that done without including or asking beta software to come and do it for us? Can we as users go and add a new analytic? And I'm hoping we're going to get to that place soon, Andre, where your users can say with a new version of Arbutus, oh, you know what, this is easy. Let's go and add an app. And get the turnaround time very, very quick. And take accountability for the application yourselves. Saying, yes, not only did I develop it, I actually tested it and it's working within a few weeks. And it's up and running into BarnOwl. So yeah, Jonathan, Andre, that's just sort of stuff that you know, I'm really looking forward to see how this happens in practice.
So Anton, if you allow me to respond, I think we've got the same vision as to how to move forward with this. I think that's the future of internal audit, and it's the future of risk management, and we've got no choice. We have to grasp this and take it forward. I do, however, not share your positivity at this stage of how easy it is. For me, it's rocket science and difficult. So that's why I'm so glad that you and Jono are smiling so much, because you need to help me to walk this journey and get to the end result.
Andre, that's have been your role, and it always will be your role, is to keeping us in reality. And I agree with you. It needs to be seen if it really is that easy in practice. And you guys on the ground at the coalface is really the guys that's going to make this thing or show us whether it's a reality or not. Hopefully, in a few months' time, when we go back and say, listen, we tried this, and it really is that easy. Or no, there's a bunch of stuff that is making this at the moment more of a concept or a fad even. So yeah, Andre, thanks for your comments.
Thanks. We have another question up. Please go ahead. I just see Master.
Hi, Jonathan. Yeah, it's Marco Master from Zimbabwe. Once met some ages ago.
Oh, Marco, how's it? Yeah, good.
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Good. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Anton.
I'm glad you're on. That's good.
Yeah,
hello,
thanks.
Hello, Marco. Pleased to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to find out. So for the Arbutus analyzer, if I get the desktop license, will I be able to integrate with the BarnOwl GRC, or maybe I need to get a server license for me to be able to integrate with the GRC?
Yeah, Marco, it's very possible to integrate with BarnOwl with a desktop license. I can tell you that getting the server could either be something you want to do now or over time. It mainly will enable you to obviously put the data onto your server and schedule it to run overnight, and really put a continuous audit in place. However, very possible to do exactly the same thing from your local desktop, and then when you're ready, integrate it with BarnOwl. It might be a slightly more manual process, but only very little so. But yes, it's not a secure, or let's call it the secure server environment. My answer to you is that very possible to do it with from your desktop analyzer.
Have you got
Okay,
Arbutus? Oh, sorry. Yeah, anyway.
Once a presentation on it, so we're contemplating, we're still at the wanted to just get some few licenses for the proof of concept, and then maybe you can see if you can go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can chat offline as well, Marco, if you want to.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Mark.
Any other questions from anyone? I don't see any questions, but thank you very much to the audience today, and thanks for your inputs from the audience, and thank you very much, Anton. I'd agree with Christina that you're a great teacher and you make things look very simple. I think, as Andre says, they're not always completely as simple as what they look like, but it is important to strive towards simplicity, and the more we can get people to buy in to systems and get the value out of them without this whole long turnaround time of every single change request is going to take a year to filter through. By the time it filters through, the whole business has changed anyway, and you need another change request. So this really does excite me as well from rapid application development side. So I think it's going to get better and better. So, but thank you, Anton. Any final comments from anyone? Please go ahead now. Otherwise, we're going to end the meeting. Excellent. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. I will do a write-up. The presentation will be available. The recording will be available. So you'll be able to find out more about Arbutus and beta software and how also the integration with BarnOwl. But thank you very much to everyone today, and thank you, Anton.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Cheers. Bye.